Chief Diversity Officer of Johnson Controls and President of the Johnson Controls Foundation. And Grady's been involved with this project from the beginning 2 years ago, and he's actually honorary co-chair of this, what we call Better World Leadership. And I'm just looking if anyone else needs me to quote admit them. And so Grady and I are going to talk briefly and then take questions. So conversation, short, sweet, not too long, and just, hopefully what you need to know to get started in terms of considering this. We've done this study for the past 2 years. We're going to do another this year because this is for companies and people who realize or have a notion that nonprofit board service benefits companies, their employees, nonprofits, and the community. And we have our studies have provided hard evidence that nonprofit board service is effective for companies that are trying to advance diversity in leadership and work towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So really powerful evidence with 9 companies. And each year we're doing the study with about 80% the same questions and then 20% new questions to look at a new issue. And what that means is for each company, you get a confidential report benchmarking your results against the results of this year and the past years for 80% of the questions. We'd love to have you participate, and we'll tell you more of what that involves, but it's a way of establishing your company as a leader in this space of nonprofit board service, and you get the report. I'm going to turn it over to Grady, and then I'll show you a few slides to show the sort of data points that we have. So Grady, do you want to make some comments?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alice, and thank you, Renee and Gabriella, for joining us today. Of course, you all represent some great companies, and we'll be honored to have you join in this work with us. I wanted to talk to you briefly about why Johnson Controls is in this space. I don't know how familiar either of you are with Johnson Controls, but we are a global company with a unique competency in buildings and building efficiency and making everything within close-knit environments safe, comfortable, sustainable, and connected, if you will. We have about 120,000 associates across the globe and a footprint in about 150 different countries. So Alice mentioned that I lead our public affairs group and I serve as our Chief Diversity Officer. So the Chief Diversity Officer role kind of speaks for itself, and you all know what that's about. I want to talk a little bit about what makes up our public affairs group. So in our public affairs group, I lead all of our global sustainability initiatives, and that's all the thought leadership around how we go out and show through our products and services and our the environments we create that we're trying to be responsible stewards of the environment. Two, in our public affairs group, I lead all of our government relations for Latin America, and we liaise very closely with our U.S. and Europe government relations group. Thirdly, in my group is all of our corporate social responsibility, employee engagement, and involvement type activities, and that's the piece I want to speak specifically about as it relates to this study. And then lastly, I also serve as president of our foundation. Believe it or not, all of those different functions are kind of matrixed together, if you will, that kind of led us to where we are with this this board study in terms of nonprofit board service. We have always looked at our employees' participation on nonprofit boards as a learning and development opportunity, as a leadership opportunity. And so from the D&I standpoint, we've leveraged opportunities for people to serve on nonprofit boards in their development plans, and have definitely supported that. We've also leveraged it from the community involvement and engagement standpoint because it gets Johnson Controls out in the communities in which we have a footprint, continues to help us to build goodwill in those communities. And again, it was also serving as a learning and development tool. The other piece is that from a sustainability standpoint, the work that people were doing on these nonprofit boards and specifically the agencies that they were representing were going towards all the great efforts of getting that a number of the UN Sustainable Development Goals as well. So we were trying to work on a way to track all of that so we could talk about Johnson Controls as being a responsible corporate citizen and doing great things in our community that were also helping to get at some of the most challenging issues the world faces at the same time. But we really didn't have a lot of empirical data to show why we were putting resources and time and effort in terms of trying to even match people with organizations, in terms of soliciting organizations, and even advising our philanthropic strategy with regard to what types of nonprofit organizations we were more predisposed to support. So we didn't have that empirical data. We just intuitively thought that it was, quote unquote, the right thing to do. When the opportunity came up to work with Alice and this group, it provided the perfect opportunity to start building the business case, if you will, for why we encourage our employees to want to get out in the community, why we spend time and talent and resources in terms of trying to make the match. Because from the survey and the data that Better World Leadership has been able to put together, we not only kind of solidified the fact that it is a great learning and development tool for our people, helps them stretch their own capacity. But we found out through the data that they are taking those learnings and are able to apply them to their real world work situations right here to the direct benefit of Johnson Controls. Not only that, it continues to create goodwill in our community. The data bears that out. Not only that, it increases our employee engagement and loyalty. So hopefully helping with regard to our retention strategy. Not only that, it helps with regard to building a better acumen towards diversity and inclusivity. And we just kept layering building blocks on top of building blocks as to why this made sense. And so now my group is better able to go to our leadership and talk about why this is a great return on our investment in the community and in our people, and specifically into issues that align with our business mission and kind of help the world live out our vision statement, and that's being a more comfortable, safe, and sustainable place. So I don't want to take up too much time, and you all may have questions, but I did want to give you a little snapshot as to why Johnson Controls is involved and why we think being, and as more companies kind of roll up their sleeves and join to this work, it helps continue to validate and really solidify the empirical data that we're seeing, because we're getting larger sampling groups. And again, it was all about, for us, being able to build the business case and talk to the C-suite in a more comprehensive and understandable way as to why this CSR and ESG, which is becoming more and more prevalent in the minds of the investment community as well, why this is not so squishy after all, why there are very solid empirical benefits that companies derive from dollars that are invested in this space. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Alice, and she'll talk a little more about some specific findings that the studies have shown to this point, and hopefully you'll have some questions, and then ultimately, hopefully you will continue to engage with us and come along the journey with us as we continue to build this out. Alice?
Thank you. Thank you. I always love listening to you. So thank you. I'm going to zoom through some slides just to give you an idea of some of the data that we've captured. And, but I'm going to tell you that number one, I'm happy to send you a copy of the slides, but number two, all of this is available, you know, no charge, of course, on the website betterworldleadership.com. So there's an infographic, which I think is everyone's favorite because it just has the highlights. And then there's the full report you can download. So the first is, and as I said, I'm going to zoom through these so we have time to take questions and tell you what would be a next step if you were interested. That employees who serve on boards develop personally and professionally. The green and the darker green, the light green, that is first-time board members within a year or two. 69%, for example, say that serving on a board helped them become a better leader. 86% is for people who've served on more, who've served for 3 years or more, and perhaps on more than one board. So this gives you an idea. We see in every data point that within 1 or 2 years, this is a transformational experience for people. Now let's do the next slide, please. Thank you. And these are additional skills that people develop by serving on boards, board governance, networking, communication, etc. Mel, we're going to do this fast. The next slide. Okay. So leadership development, and then the others, diversity and inclusion. So we see on this slide that people serve on boards with people of different backgrounds than their own, and serve organizations whose clients have different backgrounds than their own. And by the way, we supplemented the survey with interviews, and the stories were so powerful. And what we see is that as a result, employees say, people who serve on boards say, that this increases their appreciation of perspectives of people from different backgrounds and makes them more empathic. And then the next question we wanted to know is, well, in fact, this was when we added the second year, does that affect your behavior back at work? And again, powerful stories, but the data said that people who serve on boards with people from different backgrounds return to work listening more carefully to different views, creating more inclusive committees and teams, making more inclusive hiring decisions, and making more inclusive promotions. And Mel will go to the next. 72% of the people who serve on boards rise to leadership positions, but even for first-time board members within their first year or two, 53% do. So it's, again, a very quick result. And Melanie, thank you. Oh, so Grady mentioned the SDGs, and there's more data than this, but what we see is that employees who serve on nonprofit boards gain an awareness of the effects of these challenges, social, economic, and environmental challenges on their communities and on their companies. And a slide that I cut out because we want to go quickly, but we also were able to pinpoint the issues that employees who serve on boards were helping to address. The areas where they gained the greatest awareness in terms of effect on community is quality education, that is SDG 4, and decent work and economic growth, SDG 8. And employees said they gained a greater awareness of how these issues affect their company, 60% quality education, SDG 4, and 41% health and well-being, SDG 3. And we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. And importantly, people who serve on nonprofit boards and whose companies encourage and support that, even by just helping them find matches, or just providing board matching and training, or financial support. So really any support at all. Employees said this improved their impression of their company. It's been a factor in their desire to stay at the company. And some even said it's been a factor for them to choose to work at the company. Again, you can look at the detail on this later. And we'll look at, I think there's the last slide. So we also, our leadership group, so every company who participates in this project, it's been 9, designates someone. Grady is from Johnson Controls. Rob Valentine is head of the foundation at Dow Chemical. He's been involved from the beginning as well. Target, deeply involved. So we have a group, a leadership council, with the sort of lead person at the company with regard to this project. And we meet at least in person at least once a year. The meetings are amazing. I keep them to 2 hours. They're in person in New York because I'm really respectful of people's time. But every time, it's highly interactive. The group has such a great time and we learn so much from each other that they often say we need to do this longer, which is a possibility, but it's an issue of people's time. And our phone calls are exciting too. And so 2 years ago when we started on this, I get input from the Leadership Council, me and my team, about what do you want to know and how would you use it. And from the beginning, they said, Alice, we don't just want to know the value to people who serve on boards, but what about employees who don't? Is there interest and what's the barrier, et cetera? And we found that 74% of those not serving on boards express interest. So it's really a matter of making it accessible to them. I think that's the end. Yes, so these are the companies that have participated. We work in partnership with the World Environment Center and Impact 2030 and Pixera Global. And the last slide, I think, is the website. Do we have that? Yes. So betterworldleadership.com, you can find all this data.